Kirby Smart finally won his first national championship in year 6 at Georgia. Ryan Day won his first national championship with the Ohio State Buckeyes in his 6th year as their head coach. Georgia, the following year after Smart's first title, won another national championship and had an undefeated season. And then in 2023, they continued their win streak, extending it to 29 games, the longest in SEC history. And then they had an off day, a bad game against, well, you know, Nick Saban, who Kirby Smart couldn't beat in the regular season ever, and only beat him in the postseason once with his best team ever, because Nick Saban's just that good of a head coach that he even owns elite head coaches like Kirby Smart, who I think currently is the best in America, along with Ryan Day. It's really those two, maybe some others, but those two are the only ones right now with recent national championships and who have their programs operating at peak efficiency right now. It's just basically a long-winded way to say that Georgia nearly three-peated, and Ohio State probably has the same capacity because of where they are as a program. But the question that poses Ohio State is not, can they repeat? That's idiocy. Of course they can. The question is, will they? With Ohio State, the sky is the limit, and the question is never can, it's will. I think Ohio State can win it all, and I do want to talk about that here today. But I also think they will have to wait until 2026, and there are some reasons for that. Ohio State finished the 2024 season on an electric 4-0 run in the national championship after finishing the season 10-2, 7-2, and placing 4th in the Big Ten. It was Day's, by record, worst regular season ever in his career at Ohio State. There were other years where they went 10-2, but they won more Big Ten games, and they didn't have the same ugly loss that the 2024 Buckeyes did to an 8-5, really service academy team with a weaker pro-style quarterback in Michigan with Davis Warren. It was a bad loss, and I think that this Ohio State team would be remembered potentially as a GOAT caliber team if they won that game in the convincing fashion that the point spreads and Vegas said they were going to. But that's ultimately in the past. It's a game that matters. The loss matters. Yes, I don't think that people saying, oh, it doesn't matter because of the 12-team playoff and Ohio State won it all. I don't think that's true, because ultimately it could have had an impact, and it did have an impact. And all you have to do is go on Twitter or Instagram or somewhere else and look at Ohio State and Michigan fans passive-aggressively attacking each other. And why would Ohio State fans be doing that if the Michigan loss didn't matter? It's the same thing with Michigan last year. I mean, they even beat Ohio State the prior year and won it all, and they were still going after Ohio State. It's a rivalry game, so that's always going to matter. But you'd rather have the national championship. Under any circumstances, you would. And they bring back Jeremiah Smith. They bring back Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Davison Igbinosun. They return a core of their interior offensive line that, held their own water in the college football playoff. Julian Sayin is viewed by many as better than Will Howard. They bring in Max Clare at tight end. Ethan Anenwa is a great left tackle. They return Brandon Innes and Carnell Tate, and with what they're bringing in the wide receiver room with Quincy Porter, and Mylan Graham's no longer redshirted, can play in all his games without burning any eligibility. Well, I think it's safe to say the wide receiver might be even better despite losing Emeka Egbuka, who's going to be a successful pro. All of that to say, Ohio State can win it all. Ryan Day can get a second ring. He can get a third. He can get a fourth. I'll hold off on saying he can get a fifth. I think at that point you kind of need to see if he can even get a second, because we've had legends like Bob Stoops in football or like Tom Izzo in basketball win a natty, be some of the best coaches in America, and only have one title, despite being at their respective schools for nearly 2 decades in the case of Stoops, or a little over 2 decades in the case of Izzo. So really, how do I explain this here? Because like I said, Ohio State can win it all, but I don't think they will this year. I think more likely than not, they'll have to wait until 2026. And in combination with saying why I don't think they'll win it all this year, I want to talk about why I think they will until I watch this season, soak it all in. Maybe there are some, things I didn't see, both good and bad, that changed my mind from Ohio State or other teams. But right now, I'd have them tabbed as an early favorite in 2026. Reason number one why I think Ohio State will wait until 2026 is the Buckeyes only returned 46% of their 2024 production and 9 starters. Now, returning production and 9 starters, the levels that they have are not impossible to overcome. Ohio State in 2016 made the playoffs when their 15 team didn't, despite losing even more than 46% of their production. This is not factoring in Bo Atkinson coming in, a better kicker coming in, etc. So the number might be like 47 or even 48% post-spring returning production, which Bill Connolly will release pretty shortly. The point is that returning production is not always equal. Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs' returning production is incredible. That is returning production that is invaluable. You can't quantify how valuable that is. But Carson Hinsman, Tegra Shabola, Davison Igbinosun, their returning production is probably pretty easily replaceable. I don't know if Igbinosun's going to start. If he does, the holding definitely needs to end. And Hinsman has been pretty mediocre for 2 years in a row. Shabola was a disaster by PFF ratings and not good by film last year. And Luke Montgomery has very limited production, very limited action. I don't know if it was him or the scheme or the running backs being awesome. Oh, that's another point, too. Ohio State brings back aliens. This is all reason number one, but they lose aliens, too. Like Henderson and Judkins were aliens. They're gone. Donovan Jackson is an alien. What helps you win titles? An alien offensive lineman, or at least a solid offensive line. Look at all the national champions from like 2019 LSU to now. Ohio State's the only one who had a shaky offensive line or even like a bad offensive line at any point in the season. That's because they had some anomalies and good things at other positions to compensate for that. They still do. But returning that low of production and only 9 starters, and some of that production's shaky, and the offensive line recruiting has been, I'm not talking about the 2026 O-line class, which is elite. I'm talking about what Justin Fry's brought in. This is the worst Ohio State O-line by blue chip talent, and I would say by proven NFL potential that I can even remember. And I think that most Ohio State fans can remember. It's been a while since we've seen a Buckeye O-line this thin or this unproven or that lacks in, honestly, Nainwa's the only projected NFL pick, and he's not projected to be a day one. Right now, not even projected to be a day 2. So there are questions for this team. They can be answered for sure, but I will also say reason number 2 is that many of their portal additions have more eligibility. So that tracks to the fact that many of their portal additions should be better in 2026 than they are now. And the staff, and I think Ohio State's donors, could have gone all out in certain areas, but also didn't. Some people said that, and Ryan Day's iterated this, that NIL is not going to be, the number one calling to come to Ohio State. But it also sounds like they're willing to pay like big money, like Texas or even Oregon level money for some defensive players they want. I think that, and maybe this is incorrect, I think that the staff knows that they can win it all this year, but it's better to throw all the eggs in the 2026 basket than the 2025 basket. Reason number 3 is that I think most of the new staffers, and this is for why I think 2026 is a year that has more optimism to win it all for the Buckeyes, is that the new staffers will be in their second season. Hartline will be in his second year as the OC, assuming that he pans out there. Patricia will be in his second year as DC, assuming, again, he pans out there. You look at, I would say most importantly, Tyler Bowen. He'll be in his second season. And I think that, along with all the analysts that surround him, is important. I think that was the most important addition of Ohio State's coaching staff. Wasn't Patricia, wasn't promoting Hartline, wasn't promoting Keenan Bailey. It was hiring Tyler Bowen. That was the most important staff addition for Ohio State. May have been the best in the country, depending on how it pans out. I'm very high on him long term because I think that with the help he has and with what he's shown at Penn State and Virginia Tech and the recruits he's bringing in, I think he's going to be a huge upgrade compared to Fry and also probably compared to Greg Studwara. And when you're Ohio State and can recruit at the level they do, if they can get 5-star offensive linemen, it doesn't matter if Tyler Bowen isn't the number one developer in the nation at O-line. As long as he's good there and he recruits at the level he does, Ohio State will probably have a Joe Moore Award caliber O-line, or several of them. And Bowen might even be better than that. So that's reason number 3. That ties into reason number 4, which I think is the importance of integrity and just togetherness and experience and also development on the offensive line. Ohio State's O-line will return 4 starters in 2026. They will return the interior. They will return Phillip Daniels. They will return Austin Saraveld, Ian Moore. Like their entire 2-deep should basically be back. There will probably be a transfer coming, into the portal, and Ananwa doesn't have any eligibility, but still. People are talking about how they return a lot on the O-line entering 2025. I do not agree with that at all. Ohio State has been much better at developing tackle and performing at tackle under Day than on the interior. Much better. They lose 2 first-round tackles, 2 of them. They lose Josh Fryer, who is an okay tackle. They bring in Phillip Daniels, who I think is a very raw player in pass protection. So you probably don't want him with a young QB, especially in the amount of big games Ohio State plays in. Ananwa is good. I think he's going to be the best offensive lineman, but you look at center, you look at the 2 guard spots, there's questions there. There are deep questions, and pairing that with a first-year offensive line coach with the least talented room by a mile. It's the least talented room by a mile for Ohio State, honestly, is the offensive line. It doesn't, I don't understand the optimism. I don't. I understand the optimism at linebacker. I understand the optimism at corner improving. At O-line, no, absolutely not. There are several O-lines under Day and under Urban Meyer that profile as being better, if not way better, than this offensive line. But with an additional year of Bowen's coaching, with more experience, with a full season of this unit kind of going through it together, I think it will be pretty good in 2026. And that combined with Jeremiah Smith being back, with the Buckeyes returning probably around 18, 19 starters in 2026, most of their offense, a lot of their defense, their kicker James Corville, who can hit from 50, that's ultimately reason number 5. Why I think Ohio State will probably wait until 2026 to win it all again. And honestly, as for Ohio State this year, their win total's 10.5, 10-2, 11-1 is viewed as their most likely records, and they're plus 210 to win the Big Ten, and they're tied with Texas right now as the favorites to win it all. I mean, there is a chance Ohio State can three-peat. It hasn't been done in forever. I don't think Ohio State's going to do it this year because this profiles as it's not just an O-line that has very limited upside, I would say, for just this season. Longer term, it has higher upside. It's also a D-line that has a lot of questions. And when you play Texas in Week 1, when you play Penn State in Week 10, Michigan in Week 14, all schools that I would say right now profile to have better trench play, clearly. And then you have Illinois and Wisconsin back-to-back in Week 7 and 8. They have experience on the lines. Wisconsin's upgrading at D-line. Illinois has really good DNs and linebackers. I think there's a path for Ohio State to slip up here and lose a few games. I mean, they went 10-2 last year, and it's not like their schedule this year is dramatically easier. Most of the teams that they played last year that they also play this year returned more or returned the same amount or have recruited better than they have. So I don't think they'll win it all in 2025. I think in 2026, that's ultimately the year. And if you disagree with me, it's perfectly okay because they can win it all this year. I'm not saying they can't. So if you're disagreeing with me, it's not a doubt thing. It's a will they or will they won't. I think Day will definitely win a second and probably third national championship with Ohio State for sure. I just think that there are more reasons to be optimistic about 2026 than 2025. And those reasons are, again, lack of returning starters and production, coaching changes, new staffers in year one, and I don't think all of them were elite hires. You can give Day benefit of the doubt, but there are downgrades in certain areas, and some of the staffers that were retained also have questions about them. The portal class they brought in was small, it was quality over quantity, but Ohio State, if they wanted to go all in and if they were going to shove their chips in the middle of the table, all of them this year, they probably would have brought in a larger quantity of players. Number 4 is their offensive line. The offensive line, with how it was recruited and developed under Fry, you're not going to fix that in year one. You're not. I mean, that O-line is like the equivalent of, I'm just trying to think of an appropriate analogy. It's hard because they have more talent than a lot of historically broken rooms, but Ohio State's O-line is to them what Penn State's wide receiver core is to Penn State. You are not fixing that in 1 year. You aren't. And Penn State brought in 3 wide receivers and told some of their former starters to kick the curb. Ohio State didn't do that. So I think in 2026, the O-line will be good, great, could even be elite. It'll be in that range. This year, I think it's not going to have the highs or the lows, especially the highs, though, of last year's O-line with an alien like Jackson leaving and then Simmons, McLaughlin, and Fryer leaving as well, but especially the former 3. Fryer was replaceable at tackle. Reason number 5 is kind of more of an upbeat reason. It's the fact that Ohio State will return insane amounts of production and starters, and quality ones at that, entering 2026. Combine that with the fact that I think their schedule that year is like fairly advantageous. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I think almost all of their big games in the Big Ten are at home. And combine that with all they're bringing back and their new staffers probably being collectively in year 2 as a whole, or most of them lasting a year and being in year 2, that's going to be good. It's going to be a really good thing. So the Buckeyes, they can win it all this year. They, in my power ratings, are still one of America's best teams, but I think that they're going to have to wait a year to win the national championship again. I think that they'll have success. They are certainly a playoff and national championship contender, and Ryan Day right now is operating one of the best, if not potentially the best, program in college football.